So Torah portion, Re'eh. Okay, it's not Re'eh, the way that you pronounce it. You've got that first letter, Hebrew read from right to left. The first letter is like a backwards R, and it makes an R sound. And you've got the vowel sound, which follows it afterwards. Looks like a colon. If you think of it as a colon, that will probably serve you well. It's just R, separates the rest of the word. And you've got an aleph. That takes on the sound of the vowel, which is an A sound. And then you've got a hey at the end, which is pretty much a silent letter in this. So it's Re-A is how you say that. And what struck me with this Torah portion as I went through it this time is that the entire Torah portion is actually all about the spiritual mincha offering from the very beginning of it to the end. All of it is involved with the mincha offering. So that's the perspective from which I'm going to look at this. If we go into it in Deuteronomy 11:26, it starts off with quite a profound statement that is one of those ones that can just kind of pass you by because you hear things like it so often, where it says, "See, I am setting before you a blessing and a curse. The blessing when you obey the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, which I commanded you today. The curse when you do not obey the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I command you today, to go after other gods, which you have not known." And a couple of weeks ago, we looked at what these other gods can look like, both in the lives of people in the past and in our lives now. You'll notice that there's two groups of people, again, that are being addressed here. Okay, so you're going into the land. You'll receive the blessing when you obey, and you'll receive the curse when you do not obey. There's two different groups of people who are being addressed in everything that Moshe says. There's the people who obey and receive the blessings, and they go in and they're told, you have cherished to do the commands, and you have done this, and you have done that. And then there's those who do not obey. And the same is true for us as well. When we read these words, we're going to be divided up into two groups of people, those who obey and those who disobey. Hopefully we'll all be the ones who obey. Verse 29 says, "And it has been when Yehovah your Elohim has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you have given the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal." And we'll have to wait until we get into the book of Joshua to see these events happening. But again, it's written in this future perfect tense. It has been. You have put the blessings and the curses on the people on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. "Are they not beyond the Jordan toward the setting sun, in the land of the Canaanites who dwell in the desert plain opposite Gilgal?" So it's all kind of prophetically spoken. When you've entered into the land, you have done these things. Are they not beyond the Jordan that you've not crossed over? But when you've entered into the land, you have done these things. "Beside the terebinth trees of Moreh, for you are passing over the Jordan to go in to possess the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you, and you have possessed it, and you have dwelt in it, and have cherished to do all the laws and judgments which I am setting before you today." So hopefully this is something which is spoken to all of us here. Okay, you have entered into the land. You have cherished to do all the laws and judgments. But obviously we all have free will. We might well be of those people who it is said the curse will come upon you when you disobey. Okay. Deuteronomy 12 starts and says, "These are the laws and judgments which you cherish to do in the land which Yehovah Elohim of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the soil. Completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are dispossessing serve their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you have broken down their altars and smashed their pillars, burned their asherim with fire. You have cut down the carved images of their gods and have destroyed their name out of that place." Okay, so the worship of all of those gods is concerned with what is the name of that God. If you're worshipping the God of fire, For example, you're going to worship him according to his name. Maybe you need sacrifices by fire or whatever it is. So you destroy their name, the name of those foreign gods out of that place. Do not do so to Yehovah your Elohim. Seek the place where Yehovah your Elohim chooses out of all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling place, and there you have entered. So we know where that place is, having the benefit of being in the future. It was Yerushalayim in the tribe of Yehudah. Okay, so they're to go to the place where he's chosen to put his name. And obviously this is talking about the physical, earthly tabernacle. We know that the earthly tabernacle was patterned after the heavenly one, and us as a temple of the Ruach, we are in the same sort of way patterned after the heavenly tabernacle. So there's the earthly tabernacle, which is the one that's being discussed here. There's the heavenly tabernacle, and then there's us individually. We have the Spirit inside of us. We are the temple of the Ruach, but as a body, we make up the body of Mashiach, and corporately, all of us together make up a temple of the Ruach too. And I think sometimes people confuse these things and they think, well, now we offer spiritual sacrifices. So that's changed from the past. The Israelites in the past did not offer spiritual sacrifices, but that's not actually true. Okay, all of the commands require you to give one or more of the spiritual sacrifices. Every single one of those commands that they were to follow required spiritual sacrifices. So they had an earthly tabernacle. They themselves offered spiritual sacrifices, and we know that they had the Spirit in them as well, contrary to your more traditional Christian teaching. They didn't have Yeshua serving in the heavenly tabernacle at that time. At this point in time, we have Yeshua serving in the heavenly tabernacle for the cleansing of the conscience, and we have us offering spiritual sacrifices. We do not have a temple where we can cleanse the flesh at the moment, though. Okay, so Yeshua for us, he's serving in the heavenly tabernacle. It will be good for us if we had an earthly tabernacle where the physical presence of Yehovah dwelt, where we could go and be clean before him and enter in and offer sacrifice and draw close to Elohim's physical presence. One day, he will dwell physically on the earth with us. But at the moment, we've got the more important tabernacle after which the earthly one was patterned. We don't have the earthly tabernacle because in 70 AD, it was sacked. All of the holy from inside of it was taken, and we no longer have a place which is where he can physically dwell and be among his people. But we do have us corporately. We are the body of Messiah. We are the temple of the Ruach, and each one of us has the Spirit dwelling inside of us, so we can all offer those spiritual sacrifices. But as I say, offering those spiritual sacrifices was something that if they were to follow the Torah, they would have been doing as well. Leviticus 19:17-18 says, "Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yehovah." So this command is a great example of them offering the shlemim sacrifice. Okay, so we had the burnt offering, which for us spiritually is us offering all of ourselves to Yehovah. It is submission to him. We have the spiritual mincha offering, which is when you use your material goods in the way that is mandated by Yehovah. Okay, then there was the peace offering, which for us is making peace one with another. So they were doing the same thing when they followed this command. They were making peace with one another, so it required them to make that spiritual sacrifice. All of the commands, if you're in transgression of them, would require you to make an asham offering, which is the guilt offering, and the sin offering, which for us is repentance. So for every command, if you're in transgression of it, then you make that spiritual offering. You make the spiritual guilt offering, which is confession of guilt, and then you make the spiritual sin offering, the spiritual chata'at, which is repentance. So every single one of the commands requires a spiritual sacrifice to be made. All of the physical sacrifices required a spiritual sacrifice to be made as well. And this is another example of a spiritual shlomim offering. When a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or ox or sheep or any beast to watch over, and it dies or is injured or is driven away while no one is looking, let an oath of Yehovah be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that. So that's true for us as well as it was for them. But as we're making the spiritual sacrifice, we're making peace with one another by these means. They would have done the same thing. The spiritual sacrifices are not new in the New Covenant writings. They were all of the way through the Tanakh. They're just written about more explicitly in the New Covenant writings. Exodus 28:10 says, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yehovah, your Elohim. So depending on who you are, when you hear this command, it's going to require of you different spiritual sacrifices to follow it. If you're somebody who's been going to church on a Sunday for years, when you realize it's actually the seventh day that's the Sabbath, that's going to require of you an Asham offering, and it's going to require of you a sin offering in order for you to come in line with it. It might require of you to make a mincha offering, because maybe it costs you something to not work on the Sabbath. Maybe it's going to reduce your wages, it's going to reduce your pay. So that is to make a mincha offering to Yehovah. Of course, for anyone, it's going to require making an olah offering. It's going to require that submission to completely rest and to stop from working for a day. So to do these commands requires the spiritual sacrifices. Deuteronomy 12 continues and says, and there you have taken your burnt offerings, your offerings, the word there is zavach, it's sacrifices, your tithes, your ma'aseh, that is a word that means tenth. It doesn't mean tithe as we have in English, it just means your tenths. The contributions of your hand, that word is terumah. When we are looking at the word room, which means to lift up, a terumah is something that is lifted up to Yehovah. So an offering or a contribution of your hand. Your vowed offerings, when you vow something, you nadar it. So a vowed offering is called the neder, related to the word. Your voluntary offerings, your nedavah, and the firstlings of your herd and of your flock. So whatever it is, all of these things here, all of these require you to make a mincha offering. Whether it's bringing of your animals, it's bringing your tithes, whether it's bringing just other things that you lift up to Yehovah, things that you vowed or things that you voluntarily bring to him, all of them are mincha offerings on the spiritual level. And there you have eaten before Yehovah your Elohim and have rejoiced in all that you put your hand to, you and your households in which Yehovah our Elohim has blessed you. Do not do as we are doing here today, each one doing whatever is right in his own eyes, because you have not yet entered the rest and the inheritance which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you. And of course that's true for us as well. We've not entered into the rest and the inheritance that we are promised. But we're not to do each one as we think is right in our eyes. We are to give what Yehovah asks us to give, to do with those things which he has blessed us with, what he tells us to do. Another example, of course, of the mincha offering would be to give to the poor, to give to the widow, to give to the orphan, or whatever that looks like. Anything that he asks you to do with your stuff, that is a spiritual mincha offering. Genesis 4, 1-4. It's interesting when you read the Hebrew words behind this. It says, Adam knew Chava, his wife, Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain. and said, I have gained a man from Yehovah. And again she gave birth to his brother Havel. Havel became a keeper of sheep. Cain became a tiller of the ground. So for someone who keeps sheep and someone who tills the ground, what do you think is easier for each one of those people to bring as a mincha offering before Yehovah? Okay, if you till the ground, it's going to be easier for you to bring something which is the fruit of the ground. If you are a tiller of a keeper of sheep, it's going to be easier for you to bring sheep. But it doesn't matter what's easier for us to bring. It matters what Yehovah asks us to bring. So it says, it came to be in the course of time that Cain brought an offering. It doesn't say an offering. It says Cain brought a mincha of the fruit of the ground to Yehovah. Havel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And Yehovah looked to Havel and his mincha rather than Cain. Cain was obviously upset about this. Yehovah says to him, if you do well, then it's well to you. I can't remember the exact quote, but he says, why is your face fallen? Why are you wroth? If you do well, it's good for you. If not, it is sin for you. And sin's desire is towards you, but you should master it. Okay, so Cain brought an offering of what was abundantly available to him, and it was a mincha, in the same way that we would bring a mincha. But because he doesn't do it according to what is pleasing to Yehovah, Yehovah was wroth with him and counted it as sin towards him. Proverbs 3:9-10 says, esteem Yehovah with your goods and with the first fruits of all your increase. Then your storehouses shall be filled with plenty, and your vats overflow with new wine. See, the way people like Cain are, when they want to bring an offering which is easier for them to bring, they misunderstand this. And people who don't do those things which qualify as mincha offerings misunderstand this. They think that by esteeming Yehovah with their goods, they're going to actually have less. Whereas that's not what Scripture says. It shows a disbelief of the word. Disobedience is disbelief anyway, but it shows a basic misunderstanding and a disbelief of the word to not think, if I esteem Yehovah with my goods, then I will have more. He will bless me more abundantly. Numbers 18 verse 8 says, Yehovah spoke to Aharon, and see, I myself have also given you the charge of my contributions, my terumah, all the set apart of the children of Israel. I have given them to you for the anointing, and to your sons as a law forever. So much of what we heard of in Deuteronomy 12, much of that is actually to be given to Aharon and to his sons, which presents a problem for us. If we're going to bring the first fruits of our increase to Yehovah, how do we do that? Because we don't have priests. Now there are people who would say, well, the priests were Levites, so bring it to the Levites. We've got people who qualify as Levites today, but to me, that's not correct, okay? The priests are distinguished in Scripture. What was brought to the priests is distinguished in Scripture from what was brought to the Levites. Nehemiah 10:34-37 says, and we cast lots among the priests and the Levites and the people for bringing the wood offering into the house of our Elohim. Okay, so we don't generally tend to think of things like this. But in the tabernacle, the way that it was run, it needed certain things to run. You needed wood to burn on the altar. You needed oil to be given. You needed the showbread and the materials for the showbread to be provided. So people bringing things like that, they would be bringing a mincha. On a spiritual level, they'd be bringing a mincha to Yehovah. So they cast lots to see who is it that's going to bring this wood offering. According to our fathers' houses, at the appointed times, year by year, to burn on the altar of Yehovah, our Elohim, as it is written in the Torah. And to bring the first fruits of our soil and the first fruits of all fruit of our trees, year by year, to the house of Yehovah. Also to bring the firstborn of our sons and our livestock, as it is written in the Torah, the firstlings of our herds and our flocks to the house of our Elohim, to the priests attending in the house of our Elohim. So these were some of the things that were brought to the priests. And there are people today who look after livestock. Maybe none of us do, but there are people who look after livestock. There are people who tend crops who are going to have first fruits of those things. The Torah says you're to bring the first fruits. You're to bring your firstborn of your flock. You're also to redeem the firstborn of your children. Okay, so these things are to be brought to Yehovah, but as we can see, they were to be brought to the priests. And that we should bring the first fruits of our dough and our terumah and the fruit from all kinds of trees, of new wine, of oil, to the priests, to the storerooms of the house of our Elohim, and the tithes of our land to the Levites. So you see here how it draws that distinction. All these things are to be brought to the priests. The tithes are to be brought to the Levites. So how do we give to a priest? If it's not the Levites and it's distinct to the Levites, how do we actually do that today? Well, they were to be brought not just to priests, so if I can get that right, to Aharon and his sons. Aharon was the high priest, so it was to be brought to the high priest. Our high priest is Yeshua. Yeshua says in Matthew 25, verse 40, "The king shall answer and say to them, 'Truly I say to you, insofar as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers, you did it to me.'" So if we want to know how to give to Yeshua and his sons, what we do is we give to the brethren. We give to our brothers and our sisters. Yeshua specifies here the least of the brethren. Okay, so if we give it to our poor brothers and sisters, then we are giving to the high priest and his sons. Okay, the word sons being something that can relate to just men and that can relate to a mixed group of people as well. So when we are to bring these offerings, anything that is to be given to the priests specifically, we give it to our brothers and sisters who are in need. Because otherwise we have a problem. These things are not due to the priests. The Torah doesn't say, you owe the priest this. What the Torah says is, you owe Yehovah this. Yehovah has blessed you with it. It is not yours. It is to be given to Yehovah. Yehovah then tells us, I have given these things to the priests. So we can't give them directly to Yehovah. He inhabits eternity. We do with it what he says to do. So give it to the priests. How do we do that today? Because we have to separate it because it's holy to Yehovah. We can't take it for ourselves. Who do we give it to? We have our answer here. Numbers 18, 9-13 further specifies, says, "This is yours of the most set apart, the Holy of Holies, from the fire, all their offerings, all their grain offerings, all their sin offerings, all their guilt offerings, which they render to me, are most set apart for you and your sons." Again, Yeshua and his children, if you like. "Eat it in the most set apart place. Every male eats it. It is set apart to you. This also is yours, the contribution of their gift, with all the wave offerings of the children of Israel. I have given them to you and your sons and daughters with you as a law forever. Everyone who is clean in your house eats it." Okay, so that was talking about the high priest in the earthly tabernacle, where cleanliness is speaking of cleanliness of the flesh. So anyone who was clean could eat of that which was physically holy. Okay, when we're talking about things spiritually, we're talking about giving to Yeshua and to the brethren who are clean spiritually. So you wouldn't give it to somebody who was in sin in any way in their life. "All the best of the oil and all the best of the new wine and the grain, their first fruits, which they give to Yehovah, I have given them to you." Again, they're not due to the priests, they're not due to Aaron, they're due to Yehovah. The first fruits of all that is in their land, which they bring to Yehovah, are yours. Everyone who is clean in your house eats it. I know there are people online who keep animals, who grow crops. If you do that, take the first fruits of those things and give them to your brothers and sisters. Even if that looks like going to a Christian church and giving it to those people who are not willfully in sin. We wouldn't go to a hyper-grace church, but they're still our brethren. You can go and you can give it to them, maybe if they have poor there. But make sure that you separate these things because they're not ours. We can't say, oh, I had no one to give it to, so I didn't give it to anyone. It's Yehovah's. It's not for us to take for ourselves. Verse 10 says, but you have passed over the Jordan and have dwelt in the land which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you to inherit, and he has given you rest from all your enemies round about, and you have dwelt in safety. And it has been unto the place which Yehovah your Elohim chooses to make his name tabernacle there. There you bring all that I'm commanding you, your burnt offerings, your sacrifices, your tenths, the contributions of your hand, your terumah, what you lift up, or your choice offerings, your mifcha neder, as in the best of your offerings. What's happening there? It's getting gradually pulled off my head. Which you nadar to Yehovah. So that's where the vowed offerings gets its name, the neder. That's that which has been nadared. And you have rejoiced before Yehovah your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters and your male servants and your female servants, and the Levite who is within your gates, since he has no portion nor inheritance with you. So all of these things were to be brought up to Jerusalem 3 times a year, to the place where Yehovah made his name to dwell, when the people would come up and they would rejoice before Yehovah. Guard yourself that you do not offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see, except in the place which Yehovah chooses in one of your tribes. There you offer your burnt offerings, and there you are to do all that I am commanding you. So physically, when they were making a physical burnt offering, they were to take it to the temple, and they couldn't do it anywhere else. If for us, we are giving submission to Yehovah when we give an Olah offering, and we're giving it in the temple of the Ruach, then we are not to give that submission to anything else. It is only to be offered in the temple of the Ruach, not to the other gods, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago. Only with all the desire of your soul you do slaughter and eat, according to the blessing of Yehovah your Elohim, which he has given you within all your gates. The unclean and the clean do eat of it, and of the gazelle and the deer alike. Okay, so what's being said here is, when you kill an animal, if you desire to kill and eat an animal, these are the protocol to follow when you're doing that. If you were doing it in the temple, an unclean person was not able to eat of that animal because they couldn't enter into the temple. When you're eating it within your gates and you're not taking that animal to the temple to be a sacrifice, you kill the animal, and you'll see you have to drain the blood from the animal. You can't eat the blood of the animal. The unclean and the clean do eat of it alike, though, so you don't have to be in a physically clean state. Why? Because you're not going into the temple, which is where cleanness and uncleanness would have an effect. So if you kill an animal to eat outside, the clean or the unclean can eat of it, not in the temple. Only the blood you do not eat, pour it on the earth like water. And we've seen before how we have reclassified what blood is. We classify the myoglobin in the meat as blood, presumably because it's red. And we've reclassified what fat is as well. What fat and what blood are in the scriptures are different. Fat is the visceral fat, that which is around your organs. That's why the Bible specifies it's around the kidneys and around the liver. That fat is to be offered to Yehovah. What we would call fat in a piece of meat is just part of the meat. What we would call blood in that piece of meat is just part of the meat. And scientifically, they are different one from another as well. So you're not to eat the blood. That doesn't mean you can't have a rare steak. It just means you can't drink the blood that is going around the veins and arteries of the animal. Pour it on the earth as water. And that's the same as in the temple. They're being told basically, do this in the temple. If you're going to kill an animal outside of the temple, you need to not eat the blood, just like it was being offered in the temple. But it's different because the unclean and the clean can both eat of it. So a distinction is being drawn there between what happens in the temple, where everyone has to be clean, and what happens outside. Some of the rules are the same, some of them are different. You are not allowed to eat within your gates the tithe of your grain, or of your new wine, or of your oil, or of the firstlings of your herd, or of your flock, or of any of the offerings which you vow, or of your voluntary offerings, or of the heave offering of your hand. That's the tenufa. That's different. That's what you noof. That's what you wave. Okay, so none of these things are we allowed to partake of ourselves. Why? Obviously, they're not ours to have. They're Yehovah's. So we are to give them to the person that Yehovah says. For us, as we've seen, the majority of these things are given to the brethren, the poorer of the brethren. The tithe is given to the Levites. But eat them before Yehovah your Elohim in the place which Yehovah your Elohim chooses, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, and the Levite who is within your gates. And you have rejoiced before Yehovah your Elohim in all that you put your hands to. Okay, again, this rejoicing is what is written of happening at these 3 times that they would go up to Jerusalem. Guard yourself that you do not forsake the Levite as long as you live in your land. And that's something that you'll read time and again throughout the Torah. And as we'll see, that's something that actually they ended up not doing. The things that are emphasized in the Torah actually end up being the thing that Israel went astray from. When Yehovah your Elohim enlarges your borders, he has promised you, and you have said, let me eat meat, for your soul desires to eat meat. All the desire of your soul, you do eat flesh. When the place where Yehovah your Elohim chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you have slaughtered from your herd, from your flock, which Yehovah has given you, as I've commanded you, and you have eaten within your gates of all the desire of your soul. Only as the gazelle and deer are eaten, so you are to eat of it. The unclean and the clean alike eat of it. So what this is saying is, usually you'd want to take something like that to the temple, so that those things which are holy could be given to Yehovah. But if the temple's ages away from you and taking your dinner there isn't practicable, then what you do is you kill of it. The rules are slightly different. Unclean and the clean can both eat of that thing. Only be firm not to eat the blood. Where there's chazak, it's be strong not to eat the blood. For the soul is in the blood. Do not eat the soul with the meat. Do not eat it, you pour it on the earth like water. Do not eat it, that it might be well with you and your children after you, when you do what is right in the eyes of Yehovah. Okay, so what we can see from that passage of scripture that was on the previous slide, that continues onto this slide, is that it is right with Yehovah to eat meat. It is just not right with Yehovah to eat the blood. If you do that, you are doing what is right with Yehovah. Paul points out that the 5th commandment, to honor your father and your mother, is the first charge that we are given with a promise. This is another charge that we are given with a promise. Do not eat it, the blood, that it might be well with you and your children. And these things are dotted around throughout the Torah as well. Only the set apart which you have and your vowed offerings you are to take up and have gone to the place which Yehovah chooses. And you have made your burnt offerings, the meat and the blood, on the altar of Yehovah your Elohim, and the blood of your offerings is poured out on the altar of Yehovah your Elohim, and you eat the meat. So that's what they would do. Some of the meat went to the priest, some of the meat they actually ate of. Cherish and obey all these words which I command you, that it might be well with you and your children after you forever. Again, this promise that we're given. When you do what is good and right in the eyes of Yehovah your Elohim. When Yehovah your Elohim does cut off from before you the nations which you go to dispossess, and you dispossess them and dwell in their land, guard yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them. After they are destroyed from before you, that you do not inquire about their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? Let me do so too. Do not do so to Yehovah your Elohim, for every abomination which Yehovah hates, they have done to their gods, for they even burn their sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. So destroy the name of these gods from these places. This is how you bring the offerings. When you go into the land, don't be ensnared. It says to guard yourself, to shamar yourself, keep yourself from these things, because we are ensnared by these things. We're ensnared by spiritual practices that perhaps seem more appealing to us, that are maybe more familiar to us, and they do ensnare us. So we have to guard ourselves against these things, particularly not to do them in worship of Yehovah, because that's taking the name of another God and worshiping Yehovah thereby. Now, Deuteronomy 12:32 is sometimes Deuteronomy 13 verse 1. I think that the Jews have it as Deuteronomy 13 verse 1. I would say that that is actually the way that it should be. All the words I am commanding you, cherish to do it, do not add to it, nor take away from it. Okay, so does that come after don't worship Yehovah like that? Could do. Or does it come before this? When there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder shall come true of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yehovah your Elohim is trying you to know whether you love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. I would say it comes before that. Don't add to the words. Don't take away from it. Cherish to do them. If someone comes along and they're telling you to do it slightly differently, don't listen to them, because that would be adding to or taking away from it. If that happens to you and someone comes along and they're suggesting something, really it sounds like worshiping the God of the Bible, but it's slightly different from the scriptures. Yehovah is testing you to see whether or not you love him or whether you love something else. Maybe you like this other idea of, oh, we can do it slightly differently. We do everything else apart from that, or we do that, but we do it slightly differently. Whatever it is, Yehovah is testing you, and he tells you in his word that he's testing you. So guard yourself against those things. Walk after Yehovah your Elohim and fear him. Cherish his commands, obey his voice, serve him, and cling to him. We're told many times, do not be led astray. Cling to Yehovah. Guard yourself. All of these things should be telling us that it's going to be an enticement to leave Yehovah. And also that these things are tests to see whether we will or whether we will love him and cling to him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams is put to death because he has spoken apostasy against Yehovah. That's what people who come and they're telling you very slightly different thing to what the scriptures say are doing. They're speaking apostasy against Yehovah, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, redeemed you from the house of bondage to make you stray from the way in which Yehovah your Elohim commanded you to walk. And you have put away the evil from your midst. Okay, so they're trying to make you stray from the way he's commanded you. The only way that we have to test any of these things is by the word. Does it match up 100% to the word? Or is it adding to or taking away from the word? When your brother, the son of your mother, or the son or your son or your daughter, or the wife of your bosom, or your friend who is as your own soul, entices you secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which you have not known, neither you nor your father. The gods of the people who are all around you, near to you or far off from you, from one end of the earth to the other end of the earth, do not agree with him or listen to him, nor does your eye pardon him, nor spare him or conceal him. So it doesn't matter if it's your husband. You don't say, oh, I love my husband. Surely Yehovah wants me to follow my husband, which is true. So when my husband is telling me this thing to go slightly astray from the word and to do it, I'm going to follow after my husband instead. Or my wife, or my best friend, anyone who is dear to you, anyone, you do not let your eye pardon them, you don't spare them, and you don't conceal them from it if they're trying to get you to go astray. Be a good idea to speak to such a person and to ask them to repent and show them what the word says, certainly. But if they're doing that, don't take pity on them. Don't think, oh no, it's them though. It's that person that's so dear to me. It's my husband or it's my wife. I'm going to go after my husband because my husband, surely Yehovah wants me to get on well with my husband. Doesn't he say love your neighbor? Surely not loving of my neighbor to have them stoned to death. Yehovah says, you do certainly kill him. Yehovah's perspective is obviously different to ours. And we can go astray by twisting parts of the word and not taking the whole word as context and saying, no, it's said. If someone comes and tells you to do these things, Yehovah is testing you. Do not go astray after that person. Your hand is first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And you have stoned him with stones, and he has died, for he has sought to entice you away from Yehovah, your Elohim. They might come to you saying, we need to follow Yehovah by doing this. And that is different to the word. That's leading you astray from Yehovah, because Yehovah isn't anyone that someone calls Yehovah. Yehovah is very definite and very precise in who he is. Do not add to the word. Do not take away from the word. Let all Yisrael hear and fear, and not again do any such evil matter as this in your midst. So Yehovah doesn't pander to these people. He doesn't say, oh, have a soft touch with these people because they're very dear to you and you're to be loving to people. He says, do not have that attitude of mind. We ought to have Yehovah's attitude in these things. Similarly, Deuteronomy 7:26 says, do not bring an abomination into your house, lest you be accursed like it. Utterly loathe it, utterly hate it, for it is accursed. We're not to take these things which are abominations. Verse 12 of Deuteronomy 13 says, when you hear someone in one of your cities, which Yehovah your Elohim gives you to dwell in, saying, some men, sons of Belial, have gone out from your midst and led the inhabitants of their city astray, saying, let us go and serve other gods, gods whom you have not known, and you have inquired and searched out and asked diligently, and lo, truth, the thing is established that this abomination has been done in your midst. What were we told? Do not bring an abomination into your house. Utterly loathe it, utterly hate it. So if you know that this abomination has been done in your midst, You do certainly smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, putting it under the ban and all that is in it. Obviously, we're not going to go up and take arms against fellow members of Israel who start trying to make you go astray from Yehovah, because that would be murder. We don't have judges to rule on such a matter. However, we are given an attitude of mind that we're to have towards it. We're not to tolerate it. We're not to say, oh, it's okay. It's them and they're really dear to us. We are not to tolerate it. Our eyes not to pardon or to pity these people. It's livestock with the edge of the sword. You do gather all its plunder into the middle of the street, completely burn with fire the city and its plunder before Yehovah your Elohim, and it has been a heap forever, never to be built again. There does not cleave to your hand that which is put under the ban, so that Yehovah turns from the fierceness of his displeasure and has shown you compassion, loved you, and increased you, and he has sworn to your fathers. These things are to be incredibly important to us as they are to Yehovah. To Yehovah's perspective, if people are trying to lead you astray from following him, they are entailing death upon you, spiritual death, the second death upon you. So when he sees these things happening, he doesn't think, oh, it's okay, just let it go on, it'll be fine. As we might think, we're to guard ourselves, to have these attitudes of mind towards these things that Yehovah specifically tells us. When these things happen among you, guard yourself so that you have this attitude of mind. Again, Deuteronomy 13 and Deuteronomy 14, the boundary between them is blurred in my eyes. This isn't something that the Jews change or any translation I've seen has changed. But to me, those commands that we've just read are separate to this, and this should have what comes after it to follow on. It says, when you obey the voice of Yehovah your Elohim, to cherish all his commands, which I command you today, to do what is right in the eyes of Yehovah your Elohim, sons you are to Yehovah your Elohim. Do not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. The reason I think that should follow on from it is the first time that these laws were given in Leviticus 19 to tell us how to be Kedoshim, holy ones to Yehovah. They were telling us how to be his sons, how to be holy to him. And here, the second time that it's given, to me, it's preceded by, when you've done these things, you've obeyed him, you've done what's right, you are his sons. Do not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. You are a set-apart people to Yehovah your Elohim. Yehovah has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. To me, that's one cogent, coherent thought. Comes from a second retelling of this law. Leviticus 19:27-28 says, do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. Do not make cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks upon you. I am Yehovah. That's what the English translation has. Okay, so you get people who are stunning and brave and have Leviticus 19:28 tattoos. They will be very upset to know that that's not actually what this says. Okay, these are all things which are for the dead. Okay, it doesn't say tattoo marks for the dead are forbidden. It says, do not round the corner of your head, destroy the corner of your beard, do not make cuttings in your flesh for the dead. And those three things are seen throughout Scripture as mourning practices. We never see anyone putting a tattoo mark on them. Now, that wouldn't matter if it's actually what this commandment said. Okay, but it's something that supports what I'm going to show you, that those words are not in the passage. Jeremiah 16:5-6. For thus said Yehovah, do not enter the house of mourning, neither go to lament or mourn for them, for I have withdrawn my peace from this people. Again, that attitude of mind that we were looking at. Declares Yehovah, even the kindness and the compassions Yehovah has withdrawn from them. Both great and small shall die in this land, so don't mourn or lament for them. They shall not be buried. No one shall lament for them, or cut themselves, or make themselves bald. These were mourning practices which were forbidden by the Torah. Came to be on the second day after he had killed Gedaliah, when no one yet knew it, that men came from Shechem, from Shiloh, and from Shomeron, 80 men with their beards shaved, their garments torn, having cut themselves. We see this tearing of garments being something that people do in mourning as well. But their beards are shaved and they've cut themselves, okay, as a mourning practice. All the oarsmen, the mariners, all the sailors of the sea shall come down from their ships. They shall stand on the shore, and they shall raise their voice and cry bitterly over you, cast dust on their heads, rolling themselves in ashes. Okay, so this is all about mourning. They shall shave themselves bald because of you, and shall gird themselves with sackcloth and ashes, mourning. Shave themselves bald. They shall weep for you with bitterness of heart and with bitter wailing. So throughout the rest of the scriptures, we see that these things are in practice mourning rituals. It shall be in that day, declares the Master Yehovah, that I shall cause the sun to go down at noon, and shall darken the earth on a day of brightness, and shall turn your festivals into mourning, all your songs into lamentation, bringing sackcloth on all loins, baldness on every head, and shall make it like mourning for an only son. So this baldness on your head is a mourning ritual. Again, you'll notice in none of these has making tattoo marks on you been mentioned. Because of the day that shall come to ravage all the Philistines, to be cut off from Sor and Sidon, every helper that survives, for Yehovah is ravaging the Philistines, the remnant of the Isle of Kaftor. Boldness shall come upon Azar. Ashkelon shall be cut off with the remnant of the valley. Till when would you cut yourself? Shaving your beard, shaving your head, cutting yourself are all mourning practices. Make an end in Moab to him who offers in the high places burnt incense to his gods. So my heart sounds for Moab like flutes, and my heart sounds for the men of Ker Cherez like flutes. Therefore the wealth they made shall be gone, for every head is bald, every beard is clipped, cuts on all the hands. So you've got all three of them in that passage. So do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. These are mourning practices. Do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yehovah. Okay. So now that we understand that those three are all mourning practices, now we can look at the Hebrew that's used to see what is said. Okay, so this is how it's rendered in the King James Version. This is, of course, Blue Letter Bible. This is Strong's. Strong's identifies Hebrew words that are used in the passage. These Hebrew words aren't actually in the right order, but the King James Version says, you shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. And it says, Ketaveth, Seret, and then marks is Ka'aka. Those words aren't in the right order, and we'll see that. But let's see what the words mean. Natan means to give, to put, or to set. In this context, it's to make cuttings in your flesh. You could have it put cuttings in your flesh if you wanted to. Ketaveth, okay, it says in Strong's, impression, inscription, mark in the flesh, perhaps a tattoo. These are the thoughts of the people who wrote Strong's. Here in Strong's definitions, however, it says a letter or other mark branded on the skin, any mark. Okay, so this is talking about letters. It's from the word which means to write. It's from the verb which means to write. Seret means cut or an incision. Okay, an incision or a cutting. Ka'aka says here means an incision, imprintment, tattoo, or mark. An incision or gash is the definition, a mark. Okay, so ka'aka is an incision or a gash. This is all interpretation here. This is all Strong's interpretation. This word, we looked at the word natan, to give or to make. This is the modified version of the word which is used in this passage. It's titnu. It is the modified version of natan. We can see here when it's modified from natan, which is what that root is there, in the pa'al form, it means to give or to allow. Rather than to make, it's to allow something in this form. It's in the second person, masculine, plural. Here we've got another word which we need to use, we need to know because it's used in this passage. It's bachem. Now, we know that a bait means in. Okay, if you've got something, it means in that thing. This is a form of the bait. It's a modified version of the bait. And it's the second person masculine plural, so it's not in, it's in you. So when we see bechem, it means in you. So this is the Hebrew of the passage, and I'll run you through it. Okay, this word here is v'seret. That's a vav. When you see a vav, it is and. Okay, and seret is what it says. So that translates as seret. Think of serration. It's cut. We go back to the definitions we looked at. It means exclusively cut. They don't have any other kind of interpretation of it. It means cuts. So v'seret, when it's in the plural, and cuts. Okay, here we've got nefesh. This is a lamed. It's le, that's a noon, that's a pei, and that's a shin. Le nefesh. When you put le before something, like when you put be before something, it means something. It means from or to. It can mean for. Okay, so le nefesh, actually with the right vowels, it's la nefesh, means uncuts for the dead. Nefesh is a soul. Here it is a dead soul by the context it's used in. Lo titnu. Okay, this is again a lamed followed by an aleph. As I said at the beginning, an aleph takes on the sound of the vowel. The vowel in this case is that dot there. Sometimes you get the vav with the dot above it. It's called the cholam. Sometimes you don't get the vav, you just get the dot. But it's a cholam. The verbs take the sound of what they're called. So a cholam makes an O sound. So lamed, aleph taking the vowel, makes lo. When you say lo something, it means do not do that thing. That's how all of the thou shalt nots are written in the 10 words. They are lo, whatever. Then that word that we look for, that's a tav, a chirik, and a tav. So that's tit, with that we looked at, which distinguishes that from the end of the word. So it's tit, the first syllable. And we've got a noon. There we've got a vav with the dot to the left of it. Okay, when you have it to the left, it doesn't make an O, it makes an U. So when you see a vav, it can be an O or an U, depending where the vowel is. So putting all of that together, it's lo titnu. Okay, lo titnu being thou shalt not or do not allow. So far we've got ankuts for the dead, do not allow. Be varsem. Okay, break that one down for you. You can see here, reading right to left, you've got these two letters, and they are the same letter. One of them has a dot in the middle. That's called the dagesh. Okay, when you've got a dot in the middle, that letter is pronounced as a B. When you don't have a dot in the middle, it's pronounced as a V. That's why sometimes in the presentations you'll see a B with a line underneath it. That means there's no dot in the Hebrew and so it's a V, and I'll always pronounce them as V's. So that's bivasem, okay? If you're familiar with the word basar, is flesh, okay? That is the word basar there in the middle. Beit, sheen, resh. That's basar, but this doesn't have a dot, so it's visar in this case, but it's the same Hebrew letter. So beit before it means in. Bivasem means in the flesh. Now we've got another vav at the beginning meaning and then that word there, ketavet, okay? And impressions. Ka'aka. So it's not ketavet seret as Strong suggested that it was, or as Blue Letter Bible suggested it was. The order that it's actually written in the Hebrew here is v'ketavet ka'aka. Okay, so that's and impressions of cuts. It'd be a big good idea if people are watching online, skip back in the video and you can verify that that's what these words mean. But we've got vav, ketavet, ka'aka there. Then we have that same word we looked at before, lamed and an aleph with a cholam vowel, so that's low. And then that same word again, titnu, lo titnu, do not allow. Then we've got that word that we looked at, that's bechem, that's a bait. This one's got a dot in, so it's a b. And then this is a chem sound, that's a mem. So it's bechem, in you. And then this final passage here, you'll all probably recognize Yahovah there. And that's Ani Yahovah. Ani Yahovah in Hebrew means I am Yahovah. So the whole passage would say, do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard, and cuts for the dead do not allow in the flesh, and impressions of cuts do not allow in you. I am Yahovah. And that matches up with everything that we see in Scripture. What is forbidden is the cutting of the flesh for the dead. Tattoo marks is not something that exists in Hebrew. There's probably a Hebrew word for tattoo now, but it doesn't exist in the Scriptures. Not recommending anyone gets a tattoo, but it's important for us to understand the word of Elohim accurately. Deuteronomy 14 verse 1 says, do not cut yourselves, nor shave the front of your head for the dead. That's like a condensed version of what we see in Leviticus. Again, Deuteronomy is the second giving of the law. Do not eat whatever is abominable. Now, Deuteronomy 14 is all the clean and the unclean animals, and I'm not going to go through all of the clean and unclean animals. If people want to look at Torah portion Shmini from all the years we've done it, or this Torah portion from the previous years we've done it, you can have teaching on the animals that it is abominable to eat. Let's skip to the end of Deuteronomy 14, or the midway point of Deuteronomy 14. It says, do not eat whatever dies of itself. We were talking about this before. Okay, whatever dies of itself, this word is a word that means essentially corpse. Everywhere else, where it says, do not touch the corpse of those animals, it's the same word as is translated, whatever dies of itself here. And what it's talking about is something that has freshly died. Okay, we know that John the Baptist had camel hair. He wore unclean animals. So it's not that if something has died or something has become a corpse, that later you can't do anything with it, you can't have any product from it. This is talking very specifically about something's corpse. Okay, and this is saying do not eat if you come across a corpse somewhere. By interpretation, something that's died of itself. You don't know where that corpse has come from. Where did it come from? This animal has died of itself somewhere. Give it to the stranger who is within your gates to eat it, or sell it to a foreigner. For you are a set-apart people to Yahovah your Elohim. Do not cook a young goat and its mother's milk, in its mother's milk. Which may seem like a strange command to us. Give it to the stranger or to the foreigner. And that's where we're going to pick up when we come back in the second part and we look at the issue of giving to the poor.